the option is. Again, if you're just in Israel, you've got no plans for the US, then this isn't an issue. But if you are potentially thinking about the US, this is something to look into. So the FF preferred says you can convert into common, or you can convert into the next round of preferred stock. So let's say you've got a Series C preferred, you've done your Series A, you've done your Series B, now you're doing a $30 million or $50 million Series C, and you want to get some liquidity. And so I have the conversation often with the VCs and say, look, this will make the founder a better founder, because they're going to be able to pay off their mortgage, they're going to have to pay off their debts, they're not going to be worried every month because their credit cards have been maxed out for so many years. And even at the Series C, they probably aren't all caught up on their debt. So it gives them the opportunity to sell, shares to the investors that are buying the Series C. But because it converts up into the Series C, there's no issues for the options. So just keep this in the back of your mind if you're ever going to do a US company, that it is something that could potentially be very important in getting liquidity if you do want to get liquidity.
Are you seeing any transactions happening on the secondary market with startups that have raised Series A and so forth?
Not a whole lot. When with Facebook and Twitter, it was hot and heavy, but I don't see a whole lot of it happening now. There are a lot of provisions. So Ron Conway actually formed a fund just to buy, I think it was Facebook and Twitter stock, because it's a huge issue for the company. Now you're getting the stock out into stockholders that you have no idea who they are, right? So look, in every document, there's right of first refusal, there's all kinds of prohibitions on transfer, because what you want to do is you want to maintain as tight a control of your capital as possible. So I don't see a whole lot of it in the secondary market.
There's 2 or 3 funds in Israel that do secondary market. They usually go less directly to the sort of fund-to-fund kind of investment arms, and then they'll go through the VCs that need liquidity for an LP or something like that. But they also offer founders.
And how do the VCs feel about the founders, taking
As long
money?
as it's a small chunk, it's sort of it's just like a public company founder issuing. They'll always ask questions, but it's.
Yeah, well, the FF preferred is controlled by the investors, right? You can't just say, I want to get liquid and I'm going to do it. It's got to be approved by the investors. But it's an elegant tool, and you don't have to worry about the secondary market, So, equity incentive plans, you guys can read up on this. Again, this is geared more towards the US, and these are my sort of viewpoints. I like for companies to have an option plan that's very flexible. For your option plans here, is there automatic acceleration on change of control? I know everybody thinks they're going to have a stellar exit, the most amazing exit, but just in case you don't, so my plans, I put in that acceleration isn't automatic, that the board makes the determination at the time of the exit. So if somebody's been working for you for 6 months or 12 months, and then you get taken out, is it equitable that they accelerate 42 months? Maybe not. If it's a stellar exit and everyone's going to get fat and happy, it's a $1 billion exit, great. But if it's not a great exit, is it fair to the early employees, to the founders, that person's getting a windfall? So I make it, the default not acceleration, but at the option of the board can accelerate all. It can accelerate some. It can accelerate a portion. So maybe if they're 25% vested, maybe they'll accelerate 25%. But there isn't sort of this automatic acceleration for everybody just because there's an exit. And maybe people that really haven't been stellar employees that happen to be there when there's an exit say, I'm not going to accelerate that person, but I'm going to accelerate these other people. I'm going to accelerate some 100%, maybe I'm going to accelerate some 25%. So, is that the cue to take a break?
No,
we're almost
just
there. Thanks, appreciate it.
No, that's not a cue for anything. That's just.
So, one of the things that I've found very, very useful Do you have clawback provisions in your plan? So if somebody does something egregious, you can claw back the options?
Yeah, it's considered a bit abyssally aggressive, to say the least. It is
Yeah.
abyssally aggressive, but we see that. Yeah.
So I'll tell you my philosophy. Again, you'll find a lot of what I do is a little bit outside the box, just because of my experience. I had bad experiences. I had one really bad experience with an employee, and I didn't have a clawback provision. And it used to absolutely irk me that this individual had a part of my company, and they stole from me. This individual stole from me. They embezzled money, exercised their options, and there was absolutely nothing that I could do. It absolutely used to just grate me. So in my plans, I put in a clawback provision. So if somebody does something egregious, the option is deemed to have expired on the date of the first egregious act. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. And sometimes my clients kind of fight me, say, oh no, we don't want that, again, bad things don't happen to good people, nothing bad's gonna happen to me, So this one founder said, no, we're not gonna have it. And I said, look, rather have it and not need it, than need it and not have it. So this one consultant, and about 5% of the company, we raised about $150 million. It was a device company. And after this, we raised this $150 million, this consultant had 5% of the company. And all of a sudden we got hit by a suit. It was something to do with a license and unpaid royalties and all of this. We thought it was absolutely a meritless claim, but we spent about $3 million defending it. And in deposition, it came out that this consultant had conspired with the licensor to extract more money from the company. Okay, so talk about a bad actor. I mean, because litigation not only is it costly, but it's an incredible distraction from management. So the consultant was terminated because he's got 60 days to exercise his option. He exercised his option, and because of the clawback provision, which the founder didn't want in the beginning, the option was deemed to have expired at the first bad act, which was when he conspired with the licensor to bring the suit. So there was no option exercised, didn't have shares, and the founder just said, man, I cannot believe that I fought you on this. For him to have 5% of my company and the strike price was like 25 cents, and now they were doing, after we did our Series C, which had given us like $150 million, it was kind of $12, $14 a share or whatever. So he was so thankful to have it. One just a couple of months ago, sole founder, it was an S corporation, so a little bit different rules to a C corp, but this sort of early employee said, hey, I want 40% of the company, because he had 10, said I want 40% of the company. And the founder said, nope, not going to happen. The employee said, okay, I'm out of here. And on the way out, he took all the files that he had, all the company files, and shredded them. The stuff that just couldn't be replaced. So the one thing about an S corporation, it's like a limited liability company that's flow through taxation benefits. So if the company is spending over $5 million a year and you've got 10% of the company, you get 10% of the profit. So $500,000, which is kind of an annuity, right? So this guy shredding the files, the founder called me up, and he was just apoplectic. He was just, because on the way out, the employee shredded the files and gave him a check for $100,000 for the exercise of the option. Because he knew he had this annuity of now $500,000 a year because of his shareholdings. And the founder was absolutely beside himself. To have this kind of character, going to be a shareholder of the company and going to have this, 10% of all profits from sort of here on out. So I said, Joe, calm down. Calm down. You're going to have a heart attack. Just calm down. Yeah, tell me what he did. So he shredded all the files. I went to the option plan, and one of the 4 cores, this has got nothing to do with employment, it's just in the plan, one of the 4 cores pieces in the definition was failure to return company property on termination of service. So by destroying all of the company files, we said, okay, great. We sent the optionee back this check and said, the moment that you shredded those files, your option was deemed expired, and so therefore the exercise is annulled. So here's your money back, ciao. So we're in litigation now. But I don't think this guy's got legs to stand, because there's case law that says the clawback is legal. In California, which is so employee friendly, to have that clawback provision. Just something to think about for your plans. I know you're not going to think that bad things happen, and people are not going to do crazy stuff, but just in case they do, you want to maintain this control of your cap table. What are you seeing with companies that go into the States that haven't complied with 409A? So they've issued options, and they're cheap options. Have you encountered this at all?
Yes. Yes. Well, sometimes it happens when clients don't consult with us, or they come to us from different law firms, and they say, "Oh yeah, we have this employee in the U.S. and we granted options, like we do with the rest of the Israeli optionees, and the grant was for a lower price than the fair market value." So yeah, we sometimes.
So definitely, when you're issuing options, and if you're hiring U.S. employees, or you're thinking about going into the U.S., this is something you should really, really just know in the back of your mind, right? So there's a provision of the Internal Revenue Code of the U.S. that says when you issue options, they have to be issued at fair market value. If they're not issued at fair market value, it's deemed to be deferred compensation, and it's deferred compensation. There's a 20% penalty tax on the optionee. There's a penalty on the company for failing to withhold, and so it's really, really ugly. When it comes to financing or exit, so you'll find there's a junior associate on the acquirer side that's going to go through in diligence every option that's been issued, every security that's been issued, and they'll say, what was the strike price? Was there a valuation report? Or they'll look at the most recent financing and say, was this a cheap option? It's a huge, huge deal. I've seen a big deal blow up over Section 409 issues. So, you don't have to worry about this in Israel. Obviously, it's not a big deal. But if you are going to be hiring U.S. employees or thinking about going to the U.S., I don't know, maybe you would say, issue the options at fair market value, just in kind of like the 83B, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a protective measure. And, there's no, companies in the U.S. get valuation reports. It costs about $2,500 to $3,500. And there's a safe harbor under this provision which says you can rely on the valuation report for 12 months. So if you are on that track, it may be worthwhile to spend the money to get a valuation report to comply so that you don't have diligence issues on acquisition or funding in the U.S.
Can I have a
Yeah.
short question? I'm sorry if I'm talking too
No,
too
this
much.
is great. That's why you're here.
We sometimes see, we're not U.S. tax experts or benefit experts, but we usually consult with the
Yeah.
like. And I think the 409A requests that the board, either reviews a valuation or it has sufficient knowledge to get, to substantiate such valuation. So we sometimes see clients that want to save like this 10K expense for the evaluation, for the fair market value evaluation, and say, okay, we have some financial knowledge and we just did a round, so we can rely on that and say that the options are so and so.
Yeah. So the reason that people do valuations, and by the way, they're paying 10K, you can call me, I'll give you some names, I'll do it for 2,500. But the reason that people do valuations is because under the Internal Revenue Code, the burden shifts depending on whether or not you have an independent valuation. So if you have an independent valuation, the burden is on the IRS to prove that the valuation was unreasonable. If you do the valuation yourself, the burden is on the company to prove that the valuation was reasonable. So like most of my clients, especially post-funding, when you've got VCs on the board, for $2,500, $3,500, it gets more expensive once you've got funding. They say, you know what, we want to be in the safe harbor because it gives you a 12-month safe harbor. You can rely on that valuation for 12 months. So just be careful if you do it, because often, like with preferred stock, if you're selling preferred stock at $1 per share, your common stock isn't $1 per share. It's going to be a much lower price, but what it is depends on how many rounds you've done, what the liquidation stacks are, and that kind of thing. So this is just to make you aware of it, not to be frightened by it, but just to say, you know what, if you are in that situation, you're thinking about hiring people there or going there, you should definitely talk to your counsel about this. This is something that I feel very, very passionately about. I'm not an IP lawyer, but and there are many IP lawyers that don't think like business lawyers. Even in our firm, there's a few that I've kind of trained to think like a business lawyer. So when you're going out for funding, the three legs are team, TAM, and sustainable competitive advantage. If you don't have a sustainable competitive advantage, it's, for me and my clients, it's more difficult to get them funded, right? Because then you're just a first market winners. And a first market, the first mover advantage is not necessarily the winning advantage. So, if you look at Friendster and Facebook, Friendster was first, Facebook won. They kind of looked at what Friendster had done and kind of ducked and jumped. You see this all the time. The second mover advantage can actually be more powerful. So if you don't have any IP, if you don't have any sustainable competitive advantage, if all you're relying on is I'm going to get to market first, and therefore that's why I'm going to be the winner, it's a much harder sell to investors. So I look at IP as something that will help me get my clients funded. So in the US, we do provisional patents, a lot of provisional patents. A provisional patent, is everyone familiar with them?
Yeah.
Is anyone not familiar with provisionals? So it's a cheap, quick, easy thing to get on file. And within 12 months, you have to convert that to a utility file.
Is it very often, especially with software companies, writing code, etc., the IP isn't usually the barrier, meaning, yes, you absolutely need a competitive advantage in every VC, every investor, doesn't matter if they're private, they're gonna interrogate you on that. From what I've seen, definitely if you're a life science or whatever, then medical device, if you're a software company, there's usually ways to get around whatever you do, and it's definitely helpful. Investors definitely want to see it. It sort of shows you have a good game plan, and that you define your competitive advantage. But I'd be surprised if in software companies, investor VCs, consider the IP as the competitive advantage.
Well, you'd be surprised, and I'll show you how I position it, right? Because I'm thinking like a business lawyer, not like an IP lawyer, which is kind of hard to do. So what I do when we do a pitch deck is we've got our business slides, we've got our platform technology, we've got all, our what makes us all incredibly valuable, our business, our value proposition. And so I will basically take that, and take it to one of my IP folks and say, make an IP portfolio match our business slide. So we've got, this is our platform, these are all the components of our platform. On the IP slide, what I don't want to do is to flip the side and have one provisional patent, okay? It's not sort of creating the value for the VC. I'm not saying this is smoke and mirrors. I'm saying what we want to try and do is match our business slide with our IP slide. So if you think about it, you've got your business slide, you've got your value proposition, and then when you want to have an IP slide that mirrors this, everything you're saying that makes you valuable should be, protected. So I agree with software. It's difficult, especially after the Alice case, right? It's difficult to get software patented. But what I say to my clients is, look, this is, maybe the underlying stuff is not patentable. Because Match.com, probably put 1 million patents around matching, right? But when you think about, for you folks, I'm sure a lot of you folks are going to collect an inordinate amount of data. So when you think about, you've got the input, you've got some kind of weighting, ranking, measuring, matching, and then the output, the features and functionality that are going to be produced by the output of the way in which you manipulate the data could be very interesting from an IP perspective. So all you're gonna do is patent what you're doing today, you're probably too late. So for a provisional, I encourage my clients to really think about the future. Where can you dream of this thing going, right? Think of the platform, and so what we'll often do is to file like one provisional, which is a platform, it's describing the platform here with all the features and functionality. And then often what we'll do is we'll take out the critical components, make them their own individual provisionals, so that we can show a suite of provisionals, and here they kind of drill down on the description, even though they start off with the primary description from here, and they drill down on it, because with a provisional, if you want to rely on it, it's got to be sufficiently well described. And maybe on the real important ones, they'll put a couple of claim sets onto these provisionals. So now when you're going out raising money, you can say, this is our value prop on the business line, and this is what we've done to protect it. Here's our provisional platform, a platform provisional. Here's the provisional that protects this component that's very valuable. This one, this one, this one. All of a sudden, you've got a suite of provisionals. Now, when you come to file your utility, they may all be filed into one utility. Maybe it'll be, broken up. But another thing that we do, which is very valuable, is there's an acceleration procedure in the US. You can get basically your patent issued within 12 months. So it costs about $3,000 to get this acceleration process. It's basically the filing fee to the USPTO. But the case has to be finalized within 12 months. So you'll generally get your first office action within about 3 months. You'll then get a determination probably around the 6-8 month mark. So it's a very, very valuable tool to utilize when you're going out Series A funding. Because it's one thing to have provisionals, and it's another thing to have issued patents. The problem is, if it's a really broad patent, you won't get it. If it's a really narrow patent, it's not going to be worth anything. So, you've got to find yourselves a good IP lawyer that will say, okay, we've got something that's broad enough that will actually go through, and it's not too narrow to make it, basically a meaningless patent. But that getting that acceleration, if you kind of think about when you start filing your provisionals to your timeline to the Series A, it could be really interesting to pay the $3,000 to get the acceleration, so you actually have an issued patent as opposed to just a provisional patent.
So again, if you think about it, VCs in the US consider IP as a competitive advantage in democracy.
Yeah. I think most investors are kind of like lemmings. One of the questions will be, do you have IP? Because again, if you think about it from a VC perspective and an investor perspective, right, what are the risks? You've got execution risk, you've got technological risk, and you've got sustainability risk.
Yeah.
And so if you are just first to market winners, right, that's all that you've got. It's more risky than another company that has a sustainable competitive advantage because they built a portfolio. So that's the first reason, I think, to have patents. The second is to create a revenue stream. So I've got a client in LA at the board meeting about a year ago. The board had a slide, 4 quadrants with all their competitors in all of the 4 quadrants. So the company this year it's a SaaS company. They're going to do about $80 or $90 million recurring revenue this year. They want to go IPO. Now they want to get $1 billion valuation. So they're figuring out how can we, add to the bottom line. Well, so they had the slide up with all their competitors and their portfolios, the patent portfolios next to each competitor. And the competitor in the bottom right-hand quadrant had no IP. So the board made the determination to start an enforcement action against that competitor that didn't have any IP, and then the dominoes would kind of fall. They figure that they can generate about $25 million extra licensing fees, per year. That goes straight to the bottom line. They figure that's how they're going to get their $1 billion valuation on IPO. So that's another reason. It's not just defensive, but I think it's offensive as well. And as you're thinking about this, for me and my clients at the early stage, it's all about funding. It's about showing the value. But I think later on it becomes much more interesting.
I just want to ask,
Yeah.
does Coca-Cola have an IP?
Nope. it's a trade secret, and if you want to rely just on trade secrets, it's really, really tough.
Why I'm asking, because, in software, there are some algorithms. If you're going to
Oh, no.
patent those algorithms.
No, you
your
should never
code will
patent.
explode.
You should never patent the algorithms. What you want to do is put some patents around the features and functionality that are derived by the way in which you manipulate your data. Because if you're a software company, you probably are going to have a lot of data. And the outputs from the way in which you manipulate the data. Now, so when they file patents, like let's say this is A, B, C, D, these are the components, right? They say we're claiming A in conjunction with B, C, and D. And we're claiming A, B, C, and E in conjunction. Or A, B, E,
This
and
is
F in
enough.
conjunction.
This is enough.
This is what they do.
Usually you have to, when you patent, you have to tell how you're doing it, because every normal engineer can. just-
I'm not a patent lawyer, but I know that they do it and they do it successfully. So, so maybe E on its own is not patented, and so somebody could copy that. I mean, generally, you'll never be able to stop people from doing exactly what you're doing, right? But that component is not in and of itself valuable. It's really the combination of these, right? So what you want to do is when you're out there competing for sales, you want people to say, you know what, I really like your company because it's got this, this, this. That company's got this, it's got that, but it doesn't have this and it doesn't have that. I mean, again, from the funding perspective, if you have no IP. So I did a pitch day for Samsung. The head of the Catalyst Fund is always saying to me, give me deal flow, give me deal flow, give me deal flow. So I said, fine, I'll get the top 20 people, call for applications, I'll cut them down to the top 10. Well, cut them down to the top 20, I'll give them to you, get the top 10. He said, Roger, just do me one favor. Do not include anyone that does not have IP that's protected. He said, we will not invest in any company that doesn't have their secret source protected.
If it's a secret source, you can just hide the algorithm and then this is
I'm not saying,
protected.
well, to rely just on trade secrets, and especially for early stage companies where they have so many people in and out of their company, it's probably not going to remain a trade secret for very long.
Right.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm really happy to hear that investors in the US are actually excited about provisional patents. It's a good point. What I've seen through the years, and at least in the Israeli market, they've been less and less excited about it. I think it holds less water, unfortunately. I also seen as an
Why
entrepreneur.
do you think that is?
I don't know. I just think that back in the day, we're talking early year 2000, everybody was about the hype of IP. And also, my patent lawyer back in the day in the US, I've been in Boston for 13 years, told me that unfortunately there's a shift. And today, the big guys like Bill Gates and corporations have killed the little man, us, the entrepreneur, by putting provisions in. Your patent is usually worth nothing. First of all, a business process you can't even get today. It's out the window. It's really more about algorithms and technical stuff. The second part that I want to propose, and I'm not arguing this, I'm just want to show another side of things that I think as an entrepreneur, I'd rather put my time, and it takes time cycles, and more than that, to do a PCT worldwide patent, you're looking at $200,000 at least. I'd rather put the money sometime, depends on what you do, I'd rather put it into development, hire people, the burn rate is so high as it is, I'm doing 10 patents, I may be at a $2 million point.
That's where, and I'll talk about it in the funding strategy, because it's maybe 200,000, but that's only 30 months down the road, right? So you build that into your funding strategy. So when you file a provisional, it's the filing fee is $120, right? You've got 12 months to convert that to utility. At that 12-month mark, you file your PCT filing, which gives you an additional 18 months worldwide protection. So it gives you flexibility. So in my mind, for very little money, you're getting the benefit of satisfying the lemmings, the VCs, that you have taken steps to protect your IP, number one. Number two, on a worldwide basis, when you file and you pay the $3,000 for the PCT filing fees, you've got another 18 months to decide worldwide whether or not you actually want to protect it. So to me, it's cheap insurance.
But this also costs, the PCT costs still for a new startup. But I have another advice for.
Well, it's $3,000 to do
So
the PCT filing.
what I always advise is just every 3 months you open a new provisional on the same thing. So you get shifting.
But I think, yeah, but you don't get a priority date, the
Yeah,
original.
so you-
This is
so
not a
somebody-
priority, but maybe you couldn't fund the company before.
Yeah.
So
Look,
at
yeah,
least
so
you get it like that.
I've had companies that at the 12-month mark don't convert to a utility and just file another provisional,
Yeah,
to start another 12-month, you know,
exactly.
because, you know, people often expect to get funding and sometimes it doesn't happen as quickly as they want it to, so, yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. But I think that taking steps, when you look at the cost and benefit, right, I think that the $120 filing fee, and for the most part, the founders do most of it themselves. They can look at the documentation, they take it from that, and they do the patents from that. And there's not, I mean, a client called me like on a Friday morning, so I'm going to Europe, and I'm gonna be talking about all this stuff, like, it's not gonna affect my patent, is it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, disclosing, you know, all of your secret sauce here, you know? So he said, look, this is a conference of like 5,000 people, I've gotta give this talk. So basically, we filed his speech as a provision, you know, because, you know, he's leaving on the weekend, and he's calling me on Friday, so they just filed his speech, and then they, you know, did a much more robust filing, but at least, you know, there was some protection there for what he was talking about. Typically, early on the board of directors, I don't suggest that we have a big fancy board. It's at the very, very early stages. Number one, for in the US at least, you've got to have insurance, directors and officers insurance, because when people get sued, when companies get sued, typically the directors get sued as well. Is that the same here?
I really need that more people hear that advice because people tend to have a very large, crowded board at the very early beginning of the company, and it sometimes is a real pain. You talked about hard conversation. It's to get somebody off the board. That's a very hard conversation.
So I don't know why you want a big board at the beginning, right? In the very early stages. Obviously, as you grow, look, when you get funded, your board's going to be set in completely different ways. But in the beginning, you want to be able to move quickly. One of the things that I say to my founders is just remember, the board can fire you. So putting people on the board that you don't know is like rolling the dice.
Unless you keep 64% of the vote.
Yeah, but then it can be still a real pain. You got to jump through so many hoops. So I say, look, before you buy it, try it, right? And how are you going to buy it? How are you going to try it? Put them on the board of advisors.
Right.
See how they're going to be on your board of advisors. If they're a nightmare on your board of advisors, the chances of putting them on your board of directors is not going to happen, right? So how do we sell this? People say, well, we want to be on the board. Say, well, you know, we'd love to have you on the board, but you know what? We don't want to spend $15,000 in D&O insurance, and we're sure you don't want to come on the board and put your personal assets at risk. So what we'd rather do is spend that 15 grand in, you know, developing more code, but we'll put you on the advisory board so that
I'm leaving, מישהו השאיר את זה?
מישהו השאיר פה טלפון?
בהתנה.
not mine. Whose phone? So I think that's a great way to go. Just get a sense as who these people are before you actually put them on your board of directors, because it can be a real pain in the butt